Hello and welcome to the Environment This Week series section of Drishti IAS English. I am Aisha, and in today's episode we will be covering topics which are important from General Studies paper 3, that is Environment and Ecology, and that has happened in the last or the previous week. So basically the idea is that we will be taking topics from the current affairs and then we will be going into the static portion of this, and in the end we will be asking you few of the practice questions related to the topics. So let us begin with today's episode, and the topics that we will be discussing today, first of all, is the Nicobar project, and with regard to the Great Nicobar project, the coastal regulation zones are in news. Then comes the second topic of air pollution, because air pollution is a topic which always remains in news, and as of now the monsoon season is going on, but still the pollution in some parts of India has risen. Then comes the third, that is the Great Indian Bustard. Great Indian Bustard comes in news because of the critically endangered status of it and the declining population of the Great Indian Bustard. So let's begin with the first news, and that is the Great Nicobar project. So when we talk about the Great Nicobar project, so as the name itself is telling that it is in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and specifically in the Nicobar Island of it, and within the Nicobar Islands, the southernmost island of the Nicobar, that is the Great Nicobar. So let us begin. First of all, about the Great Nicobar project. So Great Nicobar project is a rupees 72,000 crore infrastructure upgrade project. Infrastructure upgrade project means that development of infrastructure will take place, and this will be taking place at the Great Nicobar Island. Great Nicobar Island is present in the Andaman and Nicobar Island. So this is the map of the Andaman and Nicobar Island. So Andaman Islands are situated at the northern side, and Nicobar Islands are situated at the southern side. And then if we talk about the Great Nicobar, so within the Nicobar group of islands, the Great Nicobar Island is situated at the southern side of the Nicobar Islands. The southernmost island of the Nicobar group of islands is the Great Nicobar. So this is the location of the Great Nicobar Island. Okay, so this is considered, the development of the Great Nicobar Island is considered to be a grave threat to the island's indigenous inhabitants and the fragile ecosystem. So by the environmentalist, it has been said that the development of the Great Nicobar project or the Great Nicobar project or island would be a great threat to the ecosystem, the fragile ecosystem of the region. So the project was launched in the year 2021, and it is considered to be a mega project, and it will be implemented at the southern end of the Andaman and Nicobar Island, and this was done within the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So the Great Nicobar project involves a transshipment port. Transshipment port means that a big ship or the cargo ships will come there, can be used for refueling and then move to the other destination. Then an international airport which will also increase the tourism sector of the region. Then township development, all the people who will work there will have a place to live, and a 450 megawatt gas and solar based power plant. So these are the things which will be taking place or which will be developed within the project. And as it has been considered as a great threat to the fragile ecosystem of the Great Nicobar or the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, so with this comes to the news the topic of the coastal regulation zone. And when we talk about the coastal regulation zone, so the word itself is telling that it is with regard to the regulation of the industrial or of the people inhabitants there. And so the coastal areas will have regulation. So let us move and know about the coastal regulation zone. So what is a coastal regulation zone? So coastal areas of sea, bays, creeks, rivers or backwaters which get influenced by the tides up to 500 meter from the high tide line, and the land between the low tide line and the high tide line have been declared as the coastal regulation zone in the year 1991. This is bit technical, I know, I will be explaining in detail, but there are two words which you need to focus on are the low tide line and the high tide line, because if you will not understand that, then you will not be able to understand the coastal regulation zone. So the two terms which are the low tide line and the high tide line. So tides, I hope all of you understands. So tides is when the sun, the moon and the earth, so when it comes in a single line with each other, then the powerful tides takes place and they are known as the spring tides, and the moon has a effect on the tides, and that is how tides takes place. And tide takes place in the oceans or seas, bays, creeks, rivers. So it is basically the movement of water, you can say, and it appears that movement of water is taking place, but it is basically the movement of energy within it. So those tides, so high tide line and low tide lines are associated with the tides that take place within a water body. So what is a high tide line? High tide line means the line on the land up to which the highest water line reaches during the spring tide. Highest water line. So when the tide take place, high tide means highest tide, the powerful tide. So when the high tide take place, the highest water line, it means the maximum water line to which it reaches, that is known as the high tide line. And in the same way, there is a low tide line. So low tide line means the line on the land up to which the lowest water line reaches during the spring tide. So see, imagine if this is a line, if the tide is coming in the high tide line, the maximum line to which the water reaches is a high tide line, and low tide line is the lowest or the minimest, the line at which the water reaches, that is the low tide line. See, lowest water line, and high tide line is the highest water line, highest distance and lowest distance covered. Okay, this is high tide line and low tide line. Now let us go back to what is coastal regulation zone, because now you will be able to understand. Let me rub this. Okay, if we will go by the map, okay, then this is, look at this map. This is the sea front. Okay, this is the sea front. This is the coastal regulation boundary, sea front and the coastal regulation boundary. Now if we talk about the coastal regulation zone, so low tide line, first of all, low tide line will be there. It means the lowest point at which the water reaches. Then comes the high tide line, the highest point at which the water reaches. And then comes the, from the high tide line comes the area of 500 meters. So low tide line plus high tide line plus the area of 500 meter, that is known as the coastal regulation zone. See, let me again tell it to you. So, okay, which get influenced by tides up to 500 meters. 500 meters, let me take out the keywords. 500 meters from the high tide line. High tide line. It means there is a high tide line 500 meters from it. Okay. And the land between the low tide line and the high tide line. So there is a low tide line. Imagine this is low tide line. So the land between the low tide line and the high tide line. So land between low tide line and high tide line, and 500 meters from the high tide line. So this area is what is known as the coastal regulation zone. If you are not clear, listen it to it again, because this is an official information, and this was given in the year 1991. This is an official information, and this is what is known as the coastal regulation zone. Low tide line, the land between low tide line and high tide line, and the 500 meter distance from the high tide line, this all constitute the coastal regulation zone. I hope this is clear. Then there are, within the coastal regulation zone, there are 4 different zones, and that is coastal regulation zone 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now let us move to coastal regulation zone 1, 2, 3 and 4. So let us first come to the coastal regulation zone 1. So it talks about, it is an ecologically sensitive areas like for example mangroves, coral reefs, biosphere reserves. So coastal regulation zone 1 consists of ecologically sensitive areas like mangroves, coral reefs, biosphere reserves. So basically construction activities are not permitted inside the coastal regulation zone 1 until unless it is with regard to the eco-sensitive areas or with regard to the special projects which are run by the government, like for example the atomic, if anything is related to the atomic energy and special permission is given. So look at this map. So if we talk about the coastal regulation zone 1, then coastal regulation zone, as we just discussed, the area of the coastal regulation zone, that is low tide line plus high tide line plus 500 meters from the high tide line. So this becomes the coastal regulation zone, and coastal regulation zone 1 eco-sensitive areas comes under it. Clear? Then comes coastal regulation zone 2. So if we talk about the coastal regulation zone 2, then coastal regulation zone 2 is basically associated with the high tide line and 200 meter from the high tide line. So there is a difference of area between the CRZ1 and CRZ2. CRZ2 is high tide line plus 200 meters from the high tide line. So CRZ2 are areas which are developed up to the shoreline and falling within the municipal limits. Buildings are permissible on the landward side of the hazardous line. So see, in the coastal regulation zone 2, it is basically high tide line and the 200 meter area from the high tide line, and they are basically present in the developed areas in the cities, CRZ2. And CRZ2 and CRZ3 are basically similar when it comes to the area. Like for example, CRZ3 is also high tide line and 200 meter from the high tide line. But CRZ3 is basically associated with the underdeveloped or the rural areas. Like for example, the areas which belongs to the rural India, while CRZ2 was with regard to the urban India. Then comes, there is one more CRZ, and that is CRZ4. So CRZ4 is basically associated with the low tide line and 12 nautical miles distance from the low tide line. That becomes the territorial waters of any country. So low tide line and the 12 nautical mile distance from the low tide line, this is the territorial water of any country. So these are the 4 different coastal regulation zone within the coastal regulation areas, and this CRZ4 is with regard to the aquatic area. So this is with regard to the aquatic area. I hope things are clear now. So this was about the Great Nicobar project and the different aspects of the Great Nicobar project, and also about the coastal regulation zone. Now moving forward. So the next topic is about air pollution. So when we talk about air pollution, what does air pollution means? So air pollution, it encompasses the presence of solid, liquid, gases, noise and radioactive radiations in the atmosphere at concentration harmful. So when they become harmful to humans, living organisms, property or environmental processes. So air pollution is when the concentration of anything in the atmosphere rises to a certain level when it becomes harmful for the people or humans. So in the MC Mehta versus Union of India case, the Supreme Court has treated the right to live in pollution-free environment. So the right to live in pollution-free environment as a part of the fundamental right to life under Article 21. So it comes under fundamental right to life under Article 21. Now let us talk about the air pollutants. So first of all, let us talk about the major air pollutants. So first of all comes the sulfur dioxide, that is SO2. So sulfur dioxide, SO2, so it comes from the consumption of fossil fuels like oil, coal and natural gas, and it reacts with water to form acid rain. So when sulfur dioxide reacts with water, it forms acid rain and it causes respiratory problems. Next comes nitrogen dioxide, that is NO2. So nitrogen dioxide is NO2. So emissions from road transport, industry and energy production sectors, and it combines or it contributes to ozone and particulate matter formation. So nitrogen dioxide is also harmful, that is NO2, and its impact is chronic lung diseases. Then comes third, and that is ammonia, that is NH3. So ammonia is NH3. It is produced by the metabolism of amino acids and other compounds which contain nitrogen. So amino acids and nitrogen, and the impact is immediate burning of eyes, nose, throat and respiratory tract. Then comes ozone. Ozone is O3. It is a secondary pollutant which is formed from other pollutants like NOx or VOC under the action of the sun. So when the reaction or the action of sun gets involved, then the formation of ozone takes place, and the impact is imitation of the eyes and respiratory mucous membrane or asthma attack. Next comes the topic of carbon monoxide, that is CO. So it is produced, or it is a product of the incomplete combustion of carbon containing compounds. So when the carbon containing compounds, the combustion does not take place properly, then the formation of carbon monoxide takes place. Impact is fatigue, confusion, dizziness due to inadequate oxygen delivery to the brain. So these are few of the air pollutants and the major air pollutants. Next comes the topic of the particulate matter, and this is very, very important. First is PM10. So it inhalable particles with diameters that are generally 10 micrometer and smaller. So PM10 is 10 micrometer and smaller. Then comes PM2.5. These are fine inhalable particles with diameters that is generally 2.5 micrometer or smaller, and that they are very dangerous to the health. Then the sources, they are emitted from construction sites, then roads, fields, fires, and the impact is irregular heartbeat, aggravated asthma and lung function. PM 2.5 is the most harmful of all. And these major air pollutants are included in the air quality index, for which short-term national ambient air quality standards are prescribed. So these are the components which are included under the air quality index. Next are the government initiatives for controlling air pollution. So what are the different government initiatives that has been taken till now to control the air pollution? So few of them is National Clean Air Program, System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting Research, that is SAFAR Portal, New Commission for Air Quality Management, Graded Response Action Plan. Then for reducing vehicular pollution, within it comes the BS6 vehicles and the National Electronic Mobility Mission Plan. So these are few of the names of the government initiative, and the ultimate aim for every project is to reduce the pollution in the air and to make the air more clean so that it can cause less harm to the humans, and inhalation of air becomes easy for people. So this was about air pollution. Next comes the topic of Great Indian Bustard. So Great Indian Bustard, and the scientific name of the Great Indian Bustard is Ardiotis nigreps, and it is the state bird of Rajasthan. It is the state bird of Rajasthan, and it is India's most critically endangered bird. So critically endangered, that makes it even more important, and question has been asked in the UPSC preliminary examination with regard to the Great Indian Bustard, and also with regard to the last topic, that was air pollution. So it is considered the flagship grassland species representing the health of the grassland ecology. So it is also an flagship species. Flagship species means that this is the bird which represents that particular ecosystem and ecology. Then the population is confined mostly to Rajasthan. It is saying mostly to Rajasthan, it is not saying only to Rajasthan. So to some other part or through some other states also they are present, like for example Gujarat, and small population also occur in Maharashtra, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. Then the great Indian bustards are slow reproducing species and they take year-long parental care of. So the parental care is very high, and that is why these birds are difficult to even hatch in the artificial environment. And the great Indian bustard achieves maturity in around 3 to 4 years. Let us talk about the protection status of the great Indian bustard, one of the most important point from exam respect. So the IUCN Red List status is critically endangered. CITES, it comes under Appendix 1. CMS, that is Convention on Migratory Species List, it comes under Appendix 1, and Wildlife Protection Act 1972, it comes under Schedule 1. So by looking at Appendix 1, Schedule 1, critically endangered, it becomes important to know that these are the birds which needs utmost care and utmost conservation efforts needs to be taken to preserve these great Indian bustards, as the number are falling very fast. Then comes, let us talk about the home where the great Indian bustards are basically found. So first is the Desert National Park. So Desert National Park is found in Rajasthan, and it is basically present in the Jaisalmer and Barmer region of the Rajasthan. And Desert National Park is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and also a national park. And it comes under Rajasthan, and it is home to great Indian bustard. Next comes the Kutch Bustard Sanctuary. As the name itself is telling, it is present in Kutch area of Gujarat. And it is the smallest sanctuary in the country. This is also an important fact for you to remember. And it is primarily to safeguard the critically endangered great Indian bustard. Critically endangered great Indian bustard. Now, what steps has been taken for the conservation of the great Indian bustard? So that is, few of the program is Species Recovery Program under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. As the name itself is telling, this works towards the recovery of the great Indian bustard. Then firefly bird deviators. So that is, flaps are installed on power lines, and if any bird comes near the power line, then the flaps, by seeing the flaps or by going near the flaps, they oppose the collision with the power lines. And they also work as the reflectors for bird species like the great Indian bustard. Then comes the National Bustard Recovery Program or the plan. Then Project Great Indian Bustard. This was launched by the Rajasthan government because the great Indian bustard is the state bird of Rajasthan. So it becomes all the more important for Rajasthan to protect and conserve its state bird. Then artificial hatching. It means that artificially the hatching of the great Indian bustard will take place, and this means that collecting eggs from the wild and artificially hatching them. So eggs will be collected of the great Indian bustard from the wild, and artificially it will be tried to hatch them so that the population of great Indian bustard can increase. So this was about the great Indian bustard. And now it is time for the practice question. So the topics that we have covered, practice questions is with regard to these topics. So you people will give me answer in the comment section. So you can do question number 1 and answer, question number 2 and answer, question number 3 and answer. So first question is, the coastal regulation zone comes under which of the following ministry? Ministry of Rural and Urban Development, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, or Ministry of Commerce and Industries. Second question, which among the following is or are an air pollutant? Sulfur dioxide, particulate matter 2.5 and particulate matter 10, then ozone, or all of the above. This is second. Now comes the question third, that is, the great Indian bustard is the state bird of which of the following states of India? That is Karnataka, Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh or Rajasthan. So these are the three questions. So give me answer 1, 2 and 3 in the comment section. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Till we meet next time, keep reading, keep writing and keep subscribing to the channel. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.